Hi records out there, Dieter speaking. Today I want to show you a little bit about Seeds of Change, the brand new gardener. And to do that, I came up with a simple example by building an random arpeggiator based on that. So let's start. First of all, we need a voice, and I'm just use the macro oscillator here and connect it to our output. So we have some voice, and let's trigger it by our clock. Now we've got already an arpeggio, but it's a quite simple one, just playing the same note again. A very simple chord, and yeah. Okay, so what we want to do is to create a chord broken up into single notes, and to do that I will use Mother, and I already know that I will use or need a fence to control the pitch range to not be from -10 to +10 volt here. Okay, so and I'll set up a major scale, and I'll put all the weights of the notes we don't want to have in our chart to 0, and I will trigger Mother with the same clock and put the span and rise up. So now we will have the notes of the C major chord generated and sent to our oscillator. But that's now not an arpeggio, because it's just a random sequence and there's no repetition in that. And that's where Seeds of Change comes in, because Seeds of Change, from my point of view, is the most important module of 2019, because it's in every patch I built from there, and I can't live without him. So let's have a look at that. Before talking about that, I have to explain a little bit the random input of Mother. So Mother is now generating notes by random. This the random algorithm used is an algorithm which allows to have a deterministic sequence of random numbers to generated, and it always starts with a seed, and this seed is taken from this random in. So if we just put some value to it, let's say we are just connected here, we get 0 volt here because it's not connected to any clock or something yet. So now this random value is always the same. That's because this results in the same note generated, because the internal random generator will initialize for every trigger with this random input, and then creates its randomness from this point. Since this doesn't change, the note is always the same. That's not what we want. What we want to do is we want to feed changing numbers in here, and let's connect our Seeds of Change to our clock and reset it correctly. Okay. What we now have is the same as before, because we do not reset this Seeds of Change, and if we don't reset it, it will just generate a random sequence. But whenever we reset it, it will start its same sequence again, starting from the same seed value. We can do that by just connecting the reset not to our global reset, but to just a 1 beat clock. And now if you listen, I make it a little bit louder here, you hear the same 4 notes repeat it, because every 16th here it will generate a different output here, but every bar, so every 4 clock inputs, it will be reset to the start of its sequence. The seed doesn't change, so it will just repeat. So now we have already an arpeggiator running, and this arpeggiator is based on random, and seeds offers 10,000 different seeds. So any change to this seed will change our random pattern. This one gets boring, so that can happen, but another one or another one. So you can play around this and find one of those 10,000 patterns which you like. But for now we just leave it as 0, because an arpeggiator doing all time the same thing is quite boring. So we want to have some let's say change in that, so this will change from time to time, and that's where the gardener comes in. The gardener is a module which was built to control those seeds instances. Let's stop it for now, and I'll connect it, and then I'll explain what's going on. This clock of seeds will now clock our gardener. The reset we will just connect here to our global reset. The seed in of gardener we will take from my global never repeating random source I always have in any patch, and I will connect the outputs of the gardener to our seeds of change, and I'll explain shortly what happens now. This reseed trigger here will now not be from our clock but from this one. Okay, now we will put this to, let's say, 16, I think is okay, and this one to 4. And now I explain what's going on. Whenever a clock comes in, it will the gardener will check whether the just I zoom in a little bit, you can see it better. When reseed diff is reached, so every 4 beats, it will send out a reseed trigger, and every 16 beats, it will do a sample and hold of its seed in to seed out. So this seed will change every 16 beats, and the reseed will be triggered every 4 beats. All beats in between will just copy the clock in to clock out, so just clock seeds of change. So that means that if the seed doesn't change, so if the new seed diff doesn't hit and only reseed diff hits, it will reseed seed of change. So it will seeds of change will start its sequence from the beginning, and if we don't change the seed, it will just repeat the last sequence. If we change the seed, we will get a new sequence. So what we have done here now is we've now got a system which will repeat the same 4-note pattern 4 times. So every bar it will change to another 4-note pattern. So let's listen to that. So now we've got repetitions here, and yeah, let's take a higher value for now here and reset it. Now we've got 2 bars, the same pattern before it changes. And what I now want to show you is that how to repeated repetition, and there I will talk about this new seed trigger and the delay compensation. So if we just look at this pair of modules, it's like a sequencer. it will generate output on every 16th. Here, that's the main thing it does. And it does it by repeating this 4 different values 8 times. What we now need is a sequencer repeating 2 values 4 times, so we will just duplicate this and initialize. Up. No, I wanted to duplicate that. Okay. And it should create 2 notes. Let's use the right click. And it should repeat it 2 times. Okay, so 4 here. And what we are now doing is, I'll stop it for now. This seed which is copied here is now a different one every time this reseed triggers hits. This we want to change. We want to get this seed from this sequencer now. And this sequencer will get its seed from its global one. We'll connect it to the reset here. We use the same, not the same clock here. Now it gets really interesting. We will use this new seed trigger here. And we connect our sequencer in here internally. Okay. Now we should be done. Now the only thing we have to do is we have to set this delay compensation to 3 samples. To explain that, what now happens is that whenever this gardener reaches his new seed division, it needs a new seed in. At that moment, it sends out a new seed trigger. This new seed trigger will clock this gardener. This one will clock seeds of change, giving us the next value here. This takes some samples time, so we have to wait for, with the sample of hold of the seed in seed to seed out, for the time it takes from sending this trigger to get this seed in. That's the idea of this delay compensation. So we now are done with our repeated repetition, and if let's check whether I've done everything. I've connected my reset here, so it should work. So let's give it a try. It will start. It switched to a different sequence. And then it will switch back to the first one. And now it's the second one again. And now this one will get a new seed from the global one, and we will get a totally different pattern. And another different pattern. And then we will repeat again. So we now already have a nested repetition implemented, which is quite nice. So to get it more interesting, let's start with a simple chord progression. To do that, just use a quantum. And I select every note from our C major scale, but I leave out the B because I don't want to have diminished chords in my chord progression. So we need a divider to decide when the chord progression should happen. I connect it to my clock and to my global reset, and I want to change the chord every 2 bars. So whenever this pattern changes, also a chord change should occur. So I use a sample and hold, and I like those modular mockbar things because they're just so cute, small, and don't take much space. Would be nice if this would be polyphonic, by the way. Okay, so let's trigger that by our 2 bar division, gets some random value from our global random thing, and put this into our quantum quantizer and use it to control the child scale of mother. And now we have already a running chord progression. Let's listen a little bit to that, a little bit more volume. Let's make it a little bit faster by doing chord progression every bar. And also take this one down here. Okay. So it's not much to do on, and it's if you wrap your brain around that, it's quite easy to use and straightforward to achieve this kind of things. Before I end, I will show you a small other thing, and stop here. We now set up here just a major chord, and because to keep it simple, we can now use Mother's scale to use different chord shapes. So let's say we want to use a second scale for 7th chords. So we just load again our major scale, and again I put down the weights of the notes I don't want to have, but I leave the 7th. I don't put it to 0, so I will allow the 7th note. And if I switch now forth and back, you'll see that this will come into play here now. Okay, so let's start that again and have a listen. Now we are on scale 1, which only uses the 1, 3, 5. And if I switch to 2, I will also get notes from the 1, 3, 5 and 7. So we can set up to 12 different chord shapes as scales in Mother, and use the scale input to choose between different chord shapes to use. And every of those chord shapes again will be able to be transposed to the child scales of my major Mother scale. Okay, so that was a quite short but very dense tutorial, I think. I hope I didn't confuse you totally, and you will be able to use that in your patches and have fun with it. So there's a lot of things to do. Not to forget, we can use different instances of the things and using different divisions here to get polyrhythmic melody things to experiment with. Okay, so that's for today, and hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun and a nice weekend.